What's up, folks? Nate here at Two Wheel Dyno Works. I am back on the dyno today with our 2025 Yamaha Tenere 700, and today we're going to be doing some new exhaust system testing and some new intake testing. The first thing we're going to cover today is the full Van Diemen high mount exhaust system that we've now installed on our bike. I've already built mapping for pretty much every high mount exhaust system imaginable for these bikes, but folks kept asking me over and over and over again to show the Van Diemen because it's the only one that's made completely out of titanium, and the bends that they use to get up to the high mount position are just slightly less aggressive than many other manufacturers out there. So I was curious for myself to see if there truly is a performance difference with this Van Diemen titanium system versus many of the other high mount systems already on the market and that we've already tested and shown you guys on our bike. But before we dive into the specific performance characteristics of the Van Diemen and the power that it creates with our custom ECU mapping in place, let's really quick go ahead and recap where these bikes start from in bone stock configuration right off the showroom floor, and then with just a free snorkel delete, which everybody should be doing, and our custom ECU mapping. That way we can really compare what additional power the Van Diemen is actually getting us. So here's what that all looks like. Let's go through this real quick. The red line is how our bike performed in bone stock trim right off the showroom floor after we'd done breaking it in. Made 63 and call that 0.4 horsepower and 44.3 pound-feet of torque. With our custom ECU mapping in place, the blue line there is what you get. Power comes up to 64.2 horsepower and torque comes up to almost 46 pound-feet. You can see there's literally just more everywhere, especially right there through the meat of the rev range. But the green line is really how everybody should really be comparing these bikes, because while there's not a huge, significant peak power improvement, there's huge performance right here through the mid-range where you're normally riding the bike, and the only change there is that we removed the snorkel from the airbox lid. I've covered this to death over the years on the Yamaha CP2 platform. The snorkel is a stupid restriction in place that is only there for noise emissions. It has nothing to do with water intrusion, nothing to do with filtration. It's just there for noise. So you yank the snorkel out of the airbox lid, you get a bunch more free power right there through the mid-range, and output then is about 64.2 horsepower and about 47.2 pound-feet of torque to the tire on pump gas. Okay, so now that we've recapped and covered that, let's go ahead and talk about what we're able to accomplish with the Van Diemen installed. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm surprised. The green line there is what we were just talking about. That's a stock exhaust with a snorkel delete and our custom ECU mapping. The red line is with this Van Diemen high mount titanium full exhaust installed on the bike, the snorkel deleted, and our custom ECU mapping to match. So all that's changed here is the exhaust system. And there is big gains in both power and torque right off the bottom of the rev range. This is significant here, folks. We end up pretty much in the stock exhaust realm between like 6,000 and 6,500 RPM. But then 7,000 up, there's also much more significant gains to be had. The bike is pretty dramatically transformed with this Van Diemen system installed, and I say I'm surprised because I do not see these results with many of the other high mount systems on the market for these bikes. We hit almost 70 horsepower, 69.84 horsepower to the tire, and only about 47.5 pound-feet of torque. Now, pretty much every high mount system I've ever seen for these bikes, which is like pretty much all of them on the market for them, make the same 47.5 pound-feet of torque with our custom ECU mapping in place and the stock airbox with the snorkel deleted. That's just what they do. Outside of the peak torque figure is where this pipe truly shines and separates itself from many of the other systems out there, because both before and after peak, there are significant gains to be had with this Van Diemen high mount compared to pretty much all the others. So here's what I'm talking about, folks. The red line is the Van Diemen with the snorkel deleted and our mapping in place. The blue line is your average high mount system with the same snorkel delete and our custom ECU mapping optimized for it. And you can see that the red line, again, this is the Van Diemen, just makes more power and torque until about 5,500 RPM, where pretty much all things are equal. And then about 7,000 RPM, it continues to even make more power and carries the torque curve further than the other high mount systems do. And from what I can tell, and honestly the reason I was curious to test this system for myself, is that these bend angles are just a little less severe than most other high mount systems out there. They've managed to keep it just a little bit straighter so they're not quite as sharp of a bend to get the muffler up into this position, so you just don't have some of the same losses that we see from most high mount systems when compared to the standard low mounts, which are a much straighter shot into the collector. So in my opinion, this Van Diemen high mount system is just a cut above the rest of the competition, making high mount full systems for these bikes. It performs better, it's massively lighter because it's made out of titanium, and it looks and sounds pretty fucking cool. But this badass exhaust from Van Diemen is actually not the only thing I'm here to talk about today and to show you guys. Underneath that seat is yet another airbox that is now being made for these bikes, and I was very excited to get my hands on it, and honestly I'm even more excited to show you the performance improvements that it offers than the Van Diemen. Now in the past decade, I have covered, tested, tuned, built mapping for, done everything you can possibly think of with just about every airbox design on the market for the Yamaha CP2 platform that's in the Tenere. On the MTs, the R7s, and the XSRs, which share this same engine, you've got tons of options. You've got your Yoshimura intakes, you've got your TST intakes, you've got your Horde Power intakes, you've got your Carbon Smith velocity stacks, you've got all kinds of stuff. But the options are a little more limited on the Teneres because the airbox is designed differently, so the fitment's a little bit different, and you can't quite swedge as big of a box underneath the tank on the Tenere. Now, I've already shown you guys on our bike the nice CNC intake, which is, yes, very Chinesium and very inexpensive, but does provide a significant improvement to very top-end performance. And I've also shown you guys the GYTR airbox, which is Yamaha's factory performance intake for these bikes. Yes, it makes huge performance improvements throughout the entirety of the rev range, far above and beyond, no matter where you look in the curve, what a free snorkel elite can accomplish, but they are very expensive and actually pretty darn hard to get your hands on, with only one vendor on the planet that I can find actually able to distribute them, and they're out of Germany. But just the other day, a customer emailed me asking if I had seen one of these. From the top, it looks pretty darn similar to the GYTR intake, but it's not. It is an airbox made by this guy. This is a small Spanish company called Boost Custom Parts, and he made an airbox for the Tenere 700. And it sure looks a hell of a lot like the GYTR intake from the outside, but it is a little bit different on the inside. Now on the GYTR airbox, it comes with its own built-in velocity stacks, whereas this Boost Custom Parts airbox does not. So seeing that we're reusing the stock velocity stacks, I was a little bit skeptical about how much performance we were actually going to gain by installing this airbox. But once we did it, I was very pleasantly surprised at the performance improvement and overall torque curve improvement that it provided. The red line there is how we were just talking about our bike a couple minutes ago. That is with the Van Diemen exhaust installed, the snorkel removed from the airbox lid, and our custom ECU mapping in place. And the only change with the blue line is the addition of the Boost Custom Parts airbox, and obviously our custom mapping tweaked to match the new airflow characteristics of the engine. There's no way around it. The bike just makes more power and torque from 4,500 RPM all the way to 9,000. It just flows way more air than the stock airbox ever could. And it creates this beautiful torque curve. I mean, it is dead flat there from like 5,000 RPM to 7 with this perfect rainbow shape to it. You really can't ask for more than that out of an airbox that with the filter and shipping costs like $300. And you can order it right off that guy's site with everybody's favorite cleanable off-road air filter from Twin Air. So while the Van Diemen is a really cool pipe, in my most recent rounds of testing, I'm honestly most impressed with the performance improvements of that airbox from Boost Custom Parts. And for those of you looking to replace your own airbox on your own Tenere 700, I can honestly say that yes, I will 100% absolutely recommend getting one of these airboxes for yourself. I'm not affiliated with this guy whatsoever. I paid for this ourselves. I waited the month and a half or so it took for shipping and to get through customs and everything else. And I'd do it again tomorrow because it's half the price of the GYTR airbox and provides very similar and very significant performance and torque improvements. Now before I wrap up this video, I do want to cover just one last thing here. And it's really nothing new. It's just a quick overview of the culmination of everything we've been able to accomplish on our new 25 Tenere 700. In comparison to how you buy them off the showroom floor. Because I've already talked at length about the enormous improvements that our custom ECU mapping makes, just the overall rideability and enjoyment of these bikes, and obviously outright performance, but it's really easy to get lost in the weeds when you watch these videos and we talk about horsepower and torque improvements of like 1 or 2 horsepower here, 1 or 2 pound-feet of torque there, from modification to the next, to the next, to the next. So let's just quickly take a second here to look at how the bike, as it sits behind me right now on our dyno, performs compared to a bike right off the showroom floor. Because I can honestly tell you that they are in no way, shape, or form comparable to one another. When you take a look at the dyno graph, they honestly don't even look like the same machine. Red's obviously the bike being stock, and blue is how it sits right now behind me on our dyno. And I've even highlighted a section of it there, right at about 5,500 RPM, where you're spending the vast majority of the time riding your T7. And you can see that you've gone from 41 pound-feet of torque to 49 pound-feet of torque, and 43 horsepower to 51 horsepower. And that is a 20% improvement in both horsepower and torque right through the portion of the rev range that you're using the most, with nothing more than bolt-ons and our custom ECU mapping. Now, 20% horsepower improvements is nothing new in the modern motorcycle era, especially with how restricted they are for emissions compliance these days, but 20% more torque from bolt-ons and tuning is huge. And again, I can tell you from just my own personal experience, having rode this bike in every iteration we've ever had it in, it feels nothing like the bikes do when you buy them and roll them off the dealership showroom floor. So if you're looking to get the most out of your new T7 and you're looking to modify the intake or the exhaust system, you want the highest quality custom ECU mapping for your specific setup that's out there on the market for these bikes, head over to tooldynoworks.com. I can guarantee that you're just not going to find higher quality tuning for them anywhere else because nobody's even gone through a fraction of the testing and tuning that we have here with our bike in our shop. Our mail-in ECU flashing service for these new T7s is available at tooldynoworks.com for only $349.99. We always flash and return ship ECUs the very same day that we receive them. And if you have any questions whatsoever about intake mods, exhaust systems, slip-ons versus full systems, high mounts versus low mounts, whatever it is, I've got the answers for you, and I'm more than happy to help answer your questions. So feel free to email us at support@tooldynoworks.com. I personally answer any and all tech support questions every single day we're open here at the shop, and both myself and my staff are always truly happy to help.